No, we can go for it. Hi, all. Welcome. How is everybody doing? Even if you just want to wave, give a thumbs up. That's enough. That's enough. So, welcome to a brand new podcast or panel converted into a podcast, Creating Team Human. My name is Kino Isaac. Some of you know me. I've had you on my own personal podcast. It's a pleasure to meet those that Don has brought in. I'm hoping to learn a lot from you guys. Um, just a brief description about me for those who don't know me. So I come from an entertainment side of the world. I'm involved in the music industry as a music producer, DJ, radio DJ, consultant, and a podcaster. I've been grateful that my podcast has grown exponentially over the last few months. I've had the opportunity and the privilege to chat to amazing people, and some of them are on here right now. And it's crazy how the universe works when it really knows what's your true intentions in your heart. Because even though I may be focused in the entertainment business, more specifically the independent space, it was to help independent artists in the lower and middle class, not only in South Africa where I'm based, but around the world, to actually develop their careers without going through the traditional system, which I felt was corrupt and a lot of nepotism that was going on. But as I started to interview more people, um, you know, it just grew that, not only focus on those involved in the entertainment business, but also how much more other people can actually learn what we talk about on the podcast. And then I had the honor of having Dawn on my podcast about 2 weeks ago. And it was another episode that just went in a completely different direction. It was just supposed to be about, Dawn, let's talk about your artistic career, your writing, let's talk about your book. But we ended up talking about so many issues that's happening currently all around the world. And a few days later, Dawn sent me an email and he's like, I've got an idea. Why don't we put a panel together to touch on these issues such as inequality, global warming, and many other topics that Dawn is going to bring up in the formal introductory. So that's my intro to this, just welcoming everyone. Thank you for making the time. I really do appreciate it. I know Dawn appreciates it as well. As we move on and towards the end of the show, when we all do conclude, I will explain to everyone, what exactly, we want to do with this, besides just putting it online as a podcast or putting it on YouTube and Spotify. What I feel is our responsibility when we leave here today, tonight, and go back into our local communities and, our country and the world in general. Because we are all one at the end of the day, no matter where we are all based. And those are the issues that we want to resolve. We want to bring more unity in the world itself. So Don, you want to take it from here.
Yeah. So you don't get to give your introduction. You've used up your time. I don't. Yeah, we're going to go around and introduce ourselves in a second. I just want to sort of agree. Thank you very much for this keynote, because Kino really did make this possible as we were talking, and we began to, as Kino said, we diverged off into an hour-and-a-half discussion of global issues. And I think there's a lot of discussion of, like they say about the weather, everybody talks about it, but nobody does anything about it. So we decided to try to do something about it, a little bit anyway, what we can, and to begin to initiate a larger discussion about what we can do to make the world a better place. And I'm just going to, if you just permit me here for a second, I'm going to share something with you. And I think some of you have already seen this, but it's kind of a starting point. I can get it here. And this is a poem by Langston Hughes. Many of you will know Langston Hughes, who was a famous Black poet, part of the Harlem Renaissance. And he was writing this in the 40s. He said, "I'm so tired of waiting, aren't you, for the world to become good and beautiful and kind. Let us take a knife and cut the world in two and see what worms are eating at the RIND. And so one of the things, as we were talking, we wanted to what's eating at the RIND? What is it that's causing the world to fall into such angst, such crisis? Why is it that we can't come together to successfully confront these existential issues like climate change, like global poverty? What's stopping us? What keeps us from realizing our unity and instead falling into sort of tribal divisions that keep us apart and deprive our species from the intelligence and ability to cope with larger issues. So I think if I just put one more thing up here and then I'm gonna, because I think that idea that I'd like to sort of immediately talk about is, well, what is eating at the RIND? What is it that we're trying to contend with here? And again, some of you saw this Carl Sagan, the famous astronomer, and Sagan had an interesting perspective because he was an astronomer. He saw the globe, the world, as a planet, a single planet, and he understood the unity that was here. And most people don't have literally that perspective. But this, I think, is really critical. Human history can be viewed as a slowly dawning awareness that we're members of a larger group. We have broadened the circle of those we love. If we're to survive, our loyalties must be broadened further to include the whole human community, the entire planet Earth. And that's kind of the topics that we wanted to talk about today. What is eating at the RIND? And can we broaden the circle to the point where we can overcome these divisions and instead find unity as we hopefully work together to try to solve global problems? That's about all I'm going to do right here, because I mean, what we want to do is see how this evolves organically. But Kino's then going to take the floor and ask people to introduce themselves.
Yeah, so once again, we want to keep our conversations as short as possible. I'm going to repeat this again because I know that all of you have a lot of important work to get back to. So each one can do a brief introduction about themselves and keep it to 1 minute, if possible. I know it's hard. It's really hard because you guys are doing so much extraordinary work out in the world right now. It's really hard. But if you can, please do. So I'm just going to go on the list downwards, how I'm seeing it on my end. And at least everybody now will get to know a bit more about each other. So Diana, can start with you.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Diane Kaufman. I like to go by Diana. I am a poet, artist, Humanism in Medicine awardee, a retired child psychiatrist, and the founder director of the Hold On campaign for suicide prevention that uses the power of art to educate, connect, express, and heal. And I'm here in Portland, Oregon.
Thank you. Thank you, Diana, for that. You had about another 40 seconds, but that was good enough. That was good enough. Straight to the point. Isabel, Karina, our truth.
Hi. Yeah, we're coming to you from Los Angeles, and we are our truth, musicians, artists, inspirational speakers. We believe that we're all connected and that love is the answer to everything, and love and number one rule is protect life. And we work through a lot of issues together and separately because we had a little bit of a hard upbringing. And I am Isabel, and this is Corinna.
Yes.
There we go. Yes, and we believe in healthy communication, and we taught each other a lot about that. The power of the mind. Mm-hmm.
Power of the mind, right there. Thank you. Calvin.
I'm Calvin White. I'm living in Salmon Arm, British Columbia in Western Canada. I work with kids every day, and kids, I think, are the soul of humanity because they're unfiltered and they speak from the heart and they speak with all of their senses in terms of how they've understood life I think we all started there, regardless of culture, regardless of geographical location. So I feel like I'm getting every day a PhD class in the DNA of who we all became as adults. I'm also a poet and an essayist.
Nice, nice. Thank you for that. Michael.
Hello, I am a spokesperson for the British Psychological Society in media. I'm an author, weathering relationships. I lecture globally on domestic and family violence and suicide prevention. I'm a clinician too. I work with family trauma. That's my speciality worldwide. And I'm glad to be here with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Kelly.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Kino. My name's Kelly Flynn. I'm currently sitting in my humble apartment in Amman, Jordan, in the Levant. I'm the country director for Norwegian People's Aid, which is a solidarity in action and humanitarian and mine action humanitarian demining organization. I'm working on Palestine, covering West Bank and Gaza. My background is in humanitarianism, peace support and negotiations, ceasefire negotiations. And I'm a mother of two. I'm a Canadian living abroad and have spent the majority of my working career working in conflict. And it's really a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. I thought my life was hectic. And you're still a mother of two. Wow. 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 Okay, thanks each one for introducing yourself in a short period of time. Like, it's so special to be in a room, you know, which, I mean, it's heroes in society that more people need to know about. And each one of you should be proud of all the work that you're doing. So, Dawn, I'm going to end back to you to get it going with the first topic, first question. And I already know who you're going to target it to. So that's going to be interesting.
Well, I don't think I gave much background myself, and I'm currently living in Ontario, but I've worked internationally. I had the wonderful privilege of working with Kelly almost 30 years ago in West Africa, where we were doing programs for training grassroots community development workers. Kelly has gone on, as she will explain to you, to work in probably the most conflict-ridden areas of the world, and particularly with refugees. I have continued my work in international education, including working in Jamaica, developing a climate action training program for youth. I'm now retired and working as an author, and also really looking forward to this kind of panel and this kind of discussion. I think it's the kind of discussion that needs to take place. And I'm sorry, Neil, is Neil on?
Neil is actually the assistant for Michael. So he's just in the background in case, yeah, okay. Michael loses.
All right. Got it. All right. So what we wanted to do with this next phase, we've had a chance to just kind of get a thumbnail sketch of people's work. And I going back to that question of, what worms are eating at the RIND, I wanted to start off by asking Kelly. Kelly is right now literally in the midst of probably the most explosive conflict zone in the world. She was, as you mentioned, they just before things blew up, she was the country head for Palestine, and was actually in the West Bank, and now she's in Jordan as Syria blew up, and you have colleagues both in Gaza Strip and in Syria. So I wanted, and what Kelly didn't say was that she's worked with some of the most marginalized and endangered people in the world, including in refugee camps on the border with Rwanda in the Congo, and she worked for many years in all I can think of is Sri Lanka, where you also worked.
In Burma.
Cambodia, Burma. And she actually left there after the military coup, and many of her associates were caught up in that terrible conflict. So I think Kelly has seen absolutely the worst and the best of humanity, and I don't say that lightly, globally. And so what I wanted to do is just ask Kelly, based on your experiences literally all over the world, what is it that we need to know about humanity, both good and bad, about what keeps us apart, Kelly? And is there any chance? I mean, I think about you working in Burma, where you literally you were trying to develop agreements with 14 different armed groups?
21.
21. Okay. So I mean, you are very familiar with conflict, tribalism, differences. Is there an answer? Is there a way of getting beyond that kind of tribal division, distrust, hatred of the other? And maybe you can even tell us what's going on right now. I think there you are, and we're reading it in the news. What should we know about what's going on?
Yeah, thanks, Don. Just a few small questions that you're throwing my way.
And we want solutions too.
And we want solutions. Okay, maybe what I'd like to stay up front is that after serving and witnessing, as Don mentioned, some of the most severe protracted conflicts in the world, some which obviously still need solutions, need justice, need durable solutions for citizens that have been displaced or traumatized and deeply, deeply harmed. One of the things that I find over the course of my 25 years out in the world is that there is beauty in chaos, and that people who are conflict affected, impacted, are not damaged. If anything, of course, trauma is complex and multi-layered, but the resiliency of people and the skills that people come forward with from conflict need to be respected and embraced and identified as being kind and loving and beautiful. And the spirit of people that I've seen in some of the worst situations, including what is yet to be legally defined and determined as genocide and ethnic cleansing in Gaza, is that I have been surrounded by some of the most amazingly kind human beings in the face of one of the worst historical atrocities that are coming to us on our cell phones and on the evening news for those that watch certain media. And the truth of the matter is that these things are going on, and we have systems that are not set up to stop it. And people power in the Gaza-Palestine crisis has been monumental and has been historic. But we look at the systematic governance structures and the failure of diplomacy and law as propping up impunity and making excuses for some of the deep systematic issues and mechanics that people are trying to stand up against and speak out against. But I'm hopeful. I sit in a country that's in a terrible, difficult neighborhood. The ceasefire in Lebanon, the current resistance and the taking of Damascus by resistance forces in Syria, and the situation that I am personally overseeing programming for in Palestine, which includes Gaza. And fragility is real, and people are hurting and people are being impacted. But the love and kindness and the resilience of people is truly amazing. I'm not sure I answered your question, Don, but hopefully I've made some remarks here that keep us all hopeful, inspired to keep doing what we do together for those that believe in human spirit and believe in human purpose.
I think if anybody had a reason to despair, it's you, but you don't. I find that one of the most remarkable things about you. Quite moving. Some of the things you've told me over the years, just really strike me at the heart. But to be able to continue to find the good in people and to see the possibilities in people, given what you've seen, is remarkable. I don't need to say anything. What anybody want to follow up on that? Have some comments? Take it where you will. I mean, one of the things you talked about was trauma. And I mean, when you're dealing with these situations, that trauma, and I know a lot of the folks here deal with trauma in one way or another. We often forget that that even when the conflict is over, the trauma continues long after.
That's where, like I want to bring in Isabel and Karina, take their perspective on it, and then move over to Diana and Michael.
Yeah, so
Yeah, no, I'll say.
I wanted to say to that I feel I really love what you said, Kelly, and I see that too, that whatever is happening, in whatever situation we are, we have a choice how we respond to it. And anybody who feels they are victim to the circumstance will have to stay victim. That's how I feel. So the only way out of victimhood is seeing what you just said, the spirit of the human and the purpose of why we're here. I do very strongly believe that we're all here with purpose. And we have this one spirit, that's this connection of all, that's the energy. I love to call spirituality, actually, just looking at it from the view of energy, that energy has certain rules to it. And I would just, this is a side note, I would love to have a scientist add to this group too, because there's, in science, I found a lot of answers why things are happening in my life. And there I found the power of the mind, because my truth, what I accept as truth, I recreate it. And when I realized there are patterns to that, I was able to change the patterns because I empowered myself away from what I learned as truth. And I believe we all can do that. And this is where the power of the human mind lies. And this is where we can embrace our power away from power over others to power of self, empowering self. I do believe we all can have a joyful life. I actually think that at the core of it all is that we are here to enjoy it. And of course, my message right now, what I'm saying, is not for everyone. It's for the one who hears me right now, because there is the resonance then. This is where we connect energetically. We can only hear ourselves. It's like my own energy comes back to me. That's what I wanted to say.
So, Kelly, with regards to what has just been said now, the power of mind, the situation you're in now, and there's no stupid questions, guys, remember, no stupid questions, please ask anything that comes to mind. Like, in your personal opinion, what is affecting people's minds right now to, do certain things?
Oh, Kino, I think I would answer that by I think we're oversaturated with information and different opinions 24/7. I think that that is one component. I think that in my opinion, we take everything in small social media mouthfuls, and we've forgotten what it is to dig deep into something, deep analysis or information or opinions and discussions. And we stay on the surface. And then by doing that, we don't formulate sound opinions and hear all voices and all sides and have debates and learn from each other. And this is one of the things that I'm seeing in the Middle East, is that the us and them divide and the misunderstandings that get created by media, by social media, by different nationalistic or religious narratives, etc. That's shaping a lot of what we're up against.
Yes. Okay, go for it.
Me? Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add, I also think that it is that we were really deceived with what humanity is in a whole. And I also have this thought that every country was a test where we were given rules, and they had a lot of regulations in all different kinds of ways, where this country says this and the other country will do something completely opposite, just to test humanity. This is how I see it, because a small group was very powerful in order to try to control it all. And so one of the things that was so huge about this is the divide, to make it like a woman is less than a man, or this is less than this. It just made it so uneven about where I come back again. I find it so important to see life itself as precious. So then the cockroach means as much as I'm sorry, I do see it that way, that all life matters. And it shouldn't be, you know how, shouldn't, I don't want to say that, all has its place, but like this whole thing, even when it was Black Lives Matters, yes, of course they do, but all of them do. And then there were some who would say life matters, and then others would say, no, 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 this is about Black Lives Matter. And this is, to me, is the divide, where we got all put into little boxes, and it made us all separate. And this is where those that try to manipulate did so well, smartly done to
fragment us.
Yeah, to make this whole thing, which is so beautiful, life itself, and we are, and nature and animals, all of it has so much beauty and so much to give. And we weren't even able to see all that anymore because we were so misguided in looking at something a certain way and taking away what this whole life is meant to be, which I agree with Isabel. It's meant to be lived happily. It's meant to be lived in whatever our desires are with reason. We didn't choose them. They came to us, and they are our truth. We all have our own truths, and they're meant to be lived. But this is, I think, one of the reasons that we are where we are, because too many people started to follow an idea instead of following the heart. But the good side is
following outside influences instead of
exactly. But I do think the upside to this all is we are in a very, very unique time. And I believe in multidimensional existence, and I know many of my other lives, and I know I waited lifetimes to be here right now, because this is the time where it's all coming back.
Unity.
Yes, the truth of life and the truth of self and the truth of love is all coming back so clearly now, I think. And that's also why it is so messy right now, because in the end stages of cleaning, the lights get really bright and you see things you haven't seen before. And it makes it more difficult, but it has a beautiful outcome.
And I just want to add that there's the power of the mind again, because I do believe as long as we think it will not get better, the chances are slimmer for it to get better. If we all together were to believe, wow, we're all going the right direction, and we're already there, now we're just waiting for it to come, it would be faster for all of us to experience that.
But all with reason and all has
Of course.
Dawn, I see your hand. It's very important what you mentioned there, because, we are all here today so we can share that light with the world, share that truth with the world. It's overambitious. Dawn and I had a chat about this. What we're attempting to do here is overambitious, but at least we're attempting. We're trying, we're doing something. And that's what counts.
I'd like to defer to Calvin. I see he had something to say.
I think that if we listen to each other, we see we're talking about the same thing from different facets. And clearly what Kelly said about the kindness that people show is, most of us experience that every day on the street with somebody just waiting for you to drive by first before they cross the road. I think we're innate as humans, ready to be with each other. Certainly in my international travels, that's what I've seen. I haven't seen any cultural barriers for being with each other. And then I think what Kelly said also, it gets in the way of what the folks in the middle were saying, which is that, like for instance, I wear hearing aids, and if there's too much noise in the room, I can't focus. And we live in a time where there's just so much noise. And that noise is doing two things. It's putting content in our ears from all these different myriad places so that we can't concentrate. We can't become who we really are. We can't live as who we really are in a global way or as in an active way as we used to. But it also means that we stop being able to hear. And what I'm experiencing more and more these days is that everybody, people talk about kids all the time, but the adults are no longer able to hear other people speaking. They're not able to sustain their concentration. they're not able to read. We skim. And so the water that we're getting is both not particularly good water, but it's also not sinking in any way that emotionally resonates or results in behavior or in any sort of a vision of understanding each other. Because we can be as kind and giving as we innately are, but if we don't understand what's going on around us, we don't understand the need, we can't activate that the way that we need to be able to. But the other thing that I wanted to mention is that leadership is what seems to be most bankrupt. And all leaders were the kids that all of us have seen on the street. And somehow we've never built leadership to see beyond the immediate, which is to have power. And so the situation in Syria right now, it's all just fingers crossed, right? We've got rid of one bad leader. We have no reason to think that we're going to get a better leader because we've never, as a species, we've not yet developed a process for producing leaders that genuinely care about serving the people's good. That's why, for me, a biggest influence in my life was Gandhi. And it's interesting that Martin Luther King Jr. was influenced by Gandhi. And that was a time when there wasn't so much noise. And so people could focus on other areas of the world where they say, now this is the way to go. Mm-hmm. And both of them were able to sustain that belief in nonviolence, that belief in it won't work if we gain power, if we gain success with violence. So for me, the key is how to reach leadership, because leadership then has the capacity to give us a reason to believe and a reason to be our better selves.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Nice.
Yeah. I could just comment on that. I have a couple of things I wanted to say too, is that, you know, I don't accept the idea that there aren't victims. I accept the fact that people do what they will with victimhood, but there are victims, lots of victims, and we see that all the time. And I think it's unfair to suggest otherwise. And I think that certainly people who work at maintaining victimhood are being self-destructive, no question. But I think too often, you know, we have a tendency to point to victims and blame the victims, when in fact, what we need to do is find ways of helping to alleviate the trauma of the victimization, whether it's rape or whether it's, you know, like even in the United States, my daughter works in inner city New Orleans. There's something called an ACE. You guys may know some of it. It's how you measure trauma in a child's life. And if a child comes in with, and it's like, you know, seeing a parent in jail and you know, being hungry, seeing someone killed. If you have 1.5, you're twice as likely, 1.5 of these, you're twice as likely to experience social and emotional difficulties as an adult. Her kids are coming in with an average of 6.5. And so these are kids who are already victims. But now what she's doing, and other people are obviously trying to do, is to help them get beyond that victimhood by finding the strength and the ability to see beyond that, be more than that. But without that help, without that assistance, without that effort, then I don't think we can expect most people to get out of that victim arc. And so, you know, a lot of, I think what we're talking about here is finding ways of making people feel that they're capable of shaping and changing their worlds. And too often, a lot of people are spending time convincing them that they can't, which is to Calvin's point. Leadership has no particular desire or interest in engaging people in actually problem solving. And I mean, I think what we're seeing more and more is kind of this idea of the divine right of wealth. It used to be divine right of kings. Now it's divine right of wealth. That somehow this is and power. That the people who hold wealth and hold power are there by virtue of some special quality on their part, and it's almost unquestionable. And then the power that they wield is by definition legitimate. And this, I think, is creating enormous problems as people just don't feel capable of and changing that. How do we change that leadership? I mean, one of the things we talk about is that, you know, well, gee, we're all on the same bus together, and that bus is going off a cliff. But we're not all driving the bus. There's only a few that are actually driving the bus. And unless we can change the drivers and get that bus turned around, we're going over the side, going over the cliff. So I think those are just some observations I had after listening.
May I interject?
What's that, Michael?
May I interject on that?
Of course.
It's interesting because we're a panel with all our different ideas and thoughts, but in human nature, Diane and I fight a different kind of war that's about people killing each other and themselves. The two keys that I've taken from over 30 years of clinical practice and scientific work is that humans do one of two things, but we all do them together. And that is desperation is key to a lot of the disharmony in the world, because desperation fights nature, desperation fights human intuition. But more than that, we are also all loving people. And I think the whole panel's discussed that right now, where we are loving, but we are desperate. We do desperate things as desperate people. My question globally, putting on a global platform, is that we each have our small parts of the world that we look at and manage and help and do. One of the most powerful mediums in the world is music. It brings people together. I find that in this 21st century, media is the thing that pulls people apart. Indoctrination, bad use of media, and yes, the small attention span to maybe bling, maybe short-term gratification, rather than looking at consequences and accountability. So my thing to the panel really today is, in my small part of the world, what I do in the world, I find that desperation and love are the conflicts, and humans, rather than working and flowing with nature, we fight it. We fight our own nature, our own core beliefs as humans, and we also fight the world around us. And I think the key to finding some kind of global resolution, no matter where we are, whether it's genocide, suicide, whatever our situation is, it is why do humans act the way they do? Why do they think the way they do? And what is the cause or root of that problem?
Diana, can I ask you to share some thoughts on the why?
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of whys,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah.
Well,
What are your thoughts on the whys?
Our conversation has made me, I don't know, think of a lot of different thoughts. I think it was Martin Luther King who spoke about that more hate cannot conquer hate, right? Only love can do that. And also about lighting the darkness. In the conversation that I think Calvin was speaking, sadly, I was thinking that both Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King were assassinated, which also gives us pause not to give up, but to see the kind of the forces of darkness and hatred, as it were. I also started thinking about the Tower of Babel and thinking I should go back to the Bible to look that up, because I think that was what, maybe people coming together, or maybe it was people's pride. And then God made everybody speak different languages and couldn't communicate with each other anymore. And in a sense that instead of unity, there was divisiveness. I was thinking of what Abraham Maslow and his concept about basic needs. And maybe it was like self-actualization is at the top, but fundamentally, I think it was maybe safety and security, which survival, basic needs, which may be part of the response to the why. why the desperation about people's basic needs not being met through power dynamics, which has to do with money and people, I don't know, people accruing money, and then with their money, what do they do with their money? Are they only helping themselves and not, helping others? So those were some of the thoughts that I was having. And I had another thought, which has slipped my mind right now, but when it comes back to me, I'll share it as well.
Problem. Is it money or is it power? That's what comes to my mind.
I remember
think-
what I was going to say. We talked
Okay.
about, we talked about social media. And I think that there needs to be, I don't know, an essay written or in the media this discussed, that it's not social media unless we make it pro-social media. It's really asocial media or anti-social media. And I think the conversation about media, as it were, and communication needs to be framed that way, and really like a public health outcry about asocial, antisocial, and pro-social use of media.
If the masses will listen. For me, I believe all news, whether it's traditional news or whether it's news you see online, is all propaganda. It's all planned. There's nothing positive in the news anymore. Even if I look in my own local community, there's nothing positive about what people are doing out there. All the good that people are doing out there. They're waiting for the next bad thing to happen, and that's your headline tomorrow. Kelly, on your end, when it comes to media and news, like, how does that affect like your work? Does it influence? Does it make it harder?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's, I could cut this a couple of different ways. Is that the dehumanization of certain groups, and in my case, I'm talking about Palestinians, is for those that are willing to look and analyze and ask questions. This is out of control, in my opinion. And so there's that side of it. Of course, what you say publicly in public forums, on media, etc., in my position, could get me banned or blocked from even accessing Palestine through any international border or official channels in. And then, of course, then there's the ugly debate that can happen online if you in media, if you state a certain opinion and choose to engage. So yes, I mean, media, whether it's communication, advocacy, awareness raising, etc., has to be an undercurrent of what I do and an awareness of how I do it and who I do it with 24/7, absolutely 24/7. And validating sources of information and being able to know and make judgments on that are professional and well positioned. This is also a big part of what I need to do. I'm very lucky. I'm privileged. My privilege is I work with local partners. I have people on the ground. I have single source direct information, and I have to protect that. I have to protect sources of information and protect people. So there's a lot of responsibility that comes with information, communications, and media, and it's a tricky landscape. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, because Dawn and I, we want to get this message out, but not via mainstream media. That's also like, we got a question mark next to that. How do we go about that? Because people, in my personal opinion, if it's something bad that's going on in the world, their eyes are glued to the screen. But there's people like us on the screen actually saying, you know what, ignore this, look at the facts, do your own research. It's like, whatever, it's pushed aside. See, so that's one of the tasks, that we have here, is to get the message out, but without using mainstream media too much,
I just wanted to.
Yeah, can I?
I'm
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was distracted. Alpha just called me, and he's had trouble getting on in the Gambia. So here we are talking about social media, and he's in a country that doesn't even have reliable power. And so this is something, again, we live in a world that isn't the same, and it's really important to keep that in mind sometimes. And I do hope he's able to join, because he was able to call me, so I hope he can still get on, because it's so important to get that perspective of a world that we live in. But because I mean, obviously we're all influenced, if not molded, by the social circumstances that we live in and grow up in. And too often that really militates against understanding those people who aren't in the same situation we are. I've been fortunate enough to work and travel in 35, 40 countries. I've yet to find a culture or people that's not rich, that doesn't have something to teach me, to share. And one of the things that I guess propelled me about wanting to do this was this genuine belief that we, at this point in the juncture of humanity, that we really do need to draw on everybody's skills, everybody's knowledge, everybody's wisdom. And right now, the kind of things that Kelly are talking about, and we're all too aware of, that sets us apart from others, is really stopping us from doing that. I mean, we can do all the inner kind of peace building we want, and I try to meditate as best I can, because sort of keeps the lid on. But I realize too that I have an obligation to the global community as well. And no one has lived that more than Kelly. Calvin hasn't mentioned or not, but he worked with largely dying tuberculosis patients with Doctors Without Borders in Uzbekistan. And again, to see that people dying in your arms for reasons that they had nothing to do with, they had no control over, they had no these are victims, and we need to be able, I think, to understand that and help everybody move beyond it. But you can't do that when you have men with as much money as the GDP of middle-sized countries wielding the power. That's very difficult to do. And so I think when we talk about this, we also have to talk about, well, what kind of social political reform needs to take place. And that, I think, is an issue that we often skirt around. And it is difficult, because it isn't easy, and there's no clear way forward. And yet, this may insult some people, but when I was writing op-eds, I wrote a piece about if everybody from all religions came together, and the one thing they did was they discarded the idea that there was a God. Even just stay with me theoretically. We just put this aside. There's no God. So therefore, all of a sudden, the main division point, that my God's the right one and yours is the wrong one, disappears. So now we can start looking at, well, what is it about your belief system that I can learn from? What is it about your religion? If we can get away with the idea that automatically you're wrong because you don't share my God, if we get rid of that, then we can actually start listening to each other. And what is it that they really say? When I was working in Islamic parts of Africa, I would often go to the mosque, and it was fascinating. I learned a lot. Not one of my students was quite excited because he thought he was going to convert me. No, sorry, but I mean, it was really interesting, and there's something to be learned there. And I think that's true of all of us if we can get beyond those sort of built-in tribal, however you want to define that, obstacles that keep us apart. I got this thing off my wall, and this is by, you may know him, Wade Davis is a pretty famous Canadian anthropologist, and he said, the world in which you were born is just one model of reality. Other cultures are not failed attempts at being you. They are unique manifestations of the human spirit. And I mean, I think that is what we're trying to find, is that unity, that unique, that we do, they're all manifestations of the same human spirit. And to be able to cut through all of that other stuff to get there isn't easy, obviously, but it's getting more critical by the day. And I think that's why I'm reading a guy now. He talks about, and we were talking about creating team human. And I love that concept, team human. And what he's saying is that the tribalism is probably an instinctual part of who we are. You know, there was someone an anthropologist saying those tribes, you know, like 50,000 years ago, those tribes who saw strangers and said, "Oh, look, new friends, let's have them over for dinner." Well, they're probably not in the gene pool anymore. So 50,000 years ago, that instinct to distrust the other, to even fear the other, probably served some survival purpose. But now it's completely dysfunctional. And how do we get beyond that? How do we get beyond those sort of instinctual seeing the other as different, as threatening, as fearful, you know, that creates fear in us? And God knows we see it every day around us, whether it's, you know, an armed warfare or political warfare. And to get beyond that it seems to me to be, how do we create team human? And, you know, if we could, a lot of it's tied up with identity, with all of this identity politics. We have to find who we are, where we are in a world that's so shattered, so atomized. How do we find who we are, where we belong? And I think that creates more and more tribalization and more division, where what we're looking for is unity, where we accept everybody. We don't care what you are, who you are. You're part of humanity. And that, I guess, is just, to me, that's somehow we've got to find that identifying with the human tribe, we can override the need to identify with your local tribe. Kelly, you wanted to speak.
Kelly, your hand is up. Yeah, can go for it.
I just think this is such a, well, for me, this is so cathartic for so many reasons. What I would say, and maybe to some of Don's comments, is start people young, talk to children. I mean, this speaks to probably Calvin's points, is engage children on issues and on difficult conversations, but obviously in a mature, responsible, healthy way. And one of the things that I've always done, and I've tried to do, and I think I'm a subject of it because Don believed in me 30 years ago when I was 20 something, is to work intergenerationally, to work across age groups, and to work across different class structures and education levels, etc. And one of the things that I'm really proud about is I work on a team that spans 20 somethings to 70-year-olds. And what I get from this is immense. And it's a privilege. And I think that if we're looking at this concept of sort of team human, it should start young and it should span generations and decades and generations to come. That's the investment. And those are my thoughts.
I would like to, if I may, yeah. I love that, and I 100% agree. I have a daughter too, and I felt like the most important thing we can teach our children is that they do have an inner guide, and that they learn to listen to that inner guide. I do believe as human beings, we all are, like you were saying, Dawn, we are energetically, I mean, we are connected. And we are all in this energy field, and it is supportive. This is what I learned on my journey, that there is something that is wanting to guide me. If I allow myself, if I get there, to believe that there is this guide, and I allow this guide to guide me, I'm always going into a beautiful experience, because the oneness that we are wants us to enjoy life. I learned this on my journey. So if I
Beautiful
can
or
teach,
better experience, right? Because if you are somewhere, it doesn't
because of course
immediately go
we
back.
can start out as victims. Yes, of course victims exist, but it's what are we doing with this, where we at? And there is a lot of guidance there, but we have to believe it first. And I think I taught my daughter, it's important that you listen to your own voice. I say, I'm not here to make the rules for you. I'm here to suggest, and you have your inner guidance, which is more important than what I say. However, as human beings, and I think that's the issue also for all of us, we were taught, you do as I say. I haven't met the generation or the cultures in which they say, listen to your inner voice. I'm just guiding you. They say, be quiet. You do as I say. This is how it goes. You follow the rule. So the individual human spirit was suppressed for all of us. That's how I see it now. And that created a lot of issues because we are here to actually very individually, beautifully, differently express ourselves. Because this is how we learn from each other. Everything that comes into my experience is for me to learn something about myself. This is how I see it. Like, so it's my own energy that comes to me. But if I see it as I'm a victim to what's happening, or if I believe that I'm being suppressed, I will be continued to be suppressed. If I believe I have no power, I will have no power. This is also what we were told. Human beings are ugly. I don't know how many times I heard that. Human beings are terrible. If anybody accepts this as truth, we are taking our own power away too, because I believe we are beautiful, incredibly powerful, and we are here to make everything better if we believe that we can. Very important that we have to believe we can.
So do you think the key to, I agree with you, humans can be beautiful. What do we do with humans who are killing each other and killing themselves? That's where my scientific background is. What makes us destroy ourselves and others?
Sorry, before we answer that question, I just want to jump to Calvin to still stick on the topic of children, and then we can go over to Michael's question.
Like most of us growing up always looked up at somebody, some figure that we wanted to emulate, or somebody that touched us, somebody that made sense to us as kind of an idol. And so we're in this time of emotionally charged sayings and visions that are trying to touch the emotional, the base emotions, the fear, the desperation within people. You get Make America Great Again, and you see what's happening in India with Modi's focus on Hindu nationalism. And so what we've been talking about, all of us, is one tribe. Team Human means the same as one tribe. And the Dalai Lama, of course, has talked about that for generations, about the interdependence of all of us. And Indigenous peoples in Canada they say the word all my relations when they finish speaking in a spiritual manner. And what they mean by that is not just their relations that are human, but all are my relations, my relationships. And so for instance, if a movement could start, there was the One Tribe movement. And the basis of that is, why do you want to hate? Why do you want to hurt somebody else? What can you do that includes us as that one tribe? And we started, if that became, instead of the Black Lives Movement or the different sayings that have come up of this, the One Tribe movement. And it was based on, why would you want to hurt somebody? And children show us that. Go to any, my grandson goes to an elementary school in Kamloops, British Columbia, town of about 80,000. And it is literally every color there. And all these kids, they don't see any of that color. They just play together. And that clearly is our innate nature for children. But it gets changed, and it gets changed by what we've been given to emulate or what we've been told. And so there's an underlying truth in that we really are one tribe. Like that's biological, it's true. And so if we capitalize on that evolutionary tribalism that has been negative, has become so negative, and say, yeah, let's stay tribal, but let's make it one tribe. Let's make it one tribe because that will work. And God knows the desperation that most of us can sense because of what's happening geopolitically and what's happening environmentally. And I mean sense. I think that probably at least in the temperate zones, every human here is aware that big things are happening in terms of climate, and their climate denialism often comes from the fear that they're feeling because they can sense things are happening. So if we could stress this sense of one tribe, and this is what will work, one tribe. And then, we do have people in the world, leaders that have spoken those words before. And we still have some, they're just not very, very many of them. So it's not like we haven't got precedents.
Yeah. I'm going to connect the dots here on what Don said, about how Alpha has been battling to get on. So how do we globally reach underprivileged, children, via social media to get the message across? They are the future. So how do we get the message across? Kelly can't be all over all at once. Goes for any of us or anyone doing, this sort of work. So what solutions can we put on the table to, get the message across to the future generations so that we can actually stop hating and killing each other? Or they're just going to continue, They're just going to continue with the global trend.
Did you see Michael's message? Michael asked, the rule of thumb is that it takes at least 3 generations to actualize change. My question is, how do we find kindness and promote being part of nature and eradicate greed, violence, and sabotage quick enough? Domestic family violence and suicide is the largest war of death we have in the world. What we're learning globally from this tragedy. One tribe will, in my opinion, fight beautiful nature rather than beautiful synergy. DFV, what's that?
Domestic family violence.
Suicide is a pandemic. I'm looking very wolf.
From where I'm okay. Yeah, Michael, thank you for putting that out there for all of us to read. From where I'm sitting, there's just too many whys. Diana and I bring up the whys a lot, in our conversations. But Diana, please say what you need to say first. I see your hand is up.
I'm thinking how in early childhood or when we're all born as babies, right? That our needs, of course, are paramount, right? The baby is crying, screaming, right? Maybe just red-faced, hands clenched, because it needs someone to pay attention and to help it. And even as that baby's needs are hopefully being met by loving, aware caregivers, parents or otherwise, that as that baby becomes, a toddler and then a preschooler, they also need help developmentally because their egocentricity of I am the world needs to be shaped, that there's other people in the world, right? And so learning how to share, right? Children initially are playing parallel to each other, and then a next step is to be able to play together. So I'm thinking that the idea of how to help all of us, especially starting, in childhood, with emotional regulation, how to be able to feel an emotion safely and process it and not take that anger, sadness, rage out on someone else or out on ourselves. Learning to regulate and understand those emotions and find coping strategies, while parallel to that, seeing how our needs are still being met, maybe in a different way than we anticipated when we're just thinking about ourselves, by that having the spirit of team human. I think there needs to be a balancing. There has to be a recognition of the individual's emotional reaction to it's not all about me, right? And what that engenders in them. And parallel to that is understanding that, yes, you have needs and they're important. And this is how your needs are still going to be met. Otherwise, I think there's going to be continued conflict taken out on other people and also, on ourselves. And I also wanted to say, and this may also have been said elsewise, that yes, people can feel appropriately or inappropriately that they are victims, but there are a multitude of victimizers out there who need to be addressed as well.
Good point.
Thanks.
I had my hand up. By golly, I had my hand up here.
Yeah.
Did you have your hand? I just wanted, because I wanted to ask a question. At least two people. I mean, I retired from the educational system. What I'm seeing in schools is, what should I say, more risk-averse schools, more risk-averse teachers, more risk-averse curriculum. And what I see is actually curriculum in schools that tend to reinforce these tribal divisions in their curriculum and so forth, rather, and not dealing with reality, the kind of things that you're talking about, Diane. I mean, I completely agree. What if that became a major strand of our education from grade 1? Because as you say, we kids are completely egocentric. That's their survival means. That's what it's all about. But we train them to find ways of and find the benefits of sharing and being part of a social group. Well, we could do the same thing. Let's assume that kids do have an instinct to distrust people who look and act somewhat different from them. Well, we can work on getting through that. Yes, okay, but look at the benefits you have. And what is that? Where does that come from? Let's talk about it. Let's discuss it. And how can we put that aside and understand that it's not functional anymore? But I don't know. Is it possible to have that conversation in schools anymore? I don't know.
I agree fully with you. It's by several generations to change a culture, change an attitude. And school is a very, very small part of the world. The biggest part of the world to influence families in the context of children growing up, in my opinion, is social media, is Hollywood, is local press, is tribal beliefs. I think that schools, the impact of schools in the 21st century is minor in the change of the attitude of humans. I believe that it's going to take several generations. There needs to be a long game in changing humans and how they behave and what they do. So school, I don't think is the hit. I think it's having responsibility and culpability for the media, people that put things in the media that influence families at home. Don't forget, we're not talking about a world full of middle-class educated people. We're talking about a world full of very, very diverse people, which we need to change the core attitude of for the common good. So in several generations, I'm sure in more countries you've been indicating, it's we have to really think about, well, how many generations it's going to take to change the attitude of these people that a lot lost mothers, brothers, cousins, aunts, legs, arms, eyes, etc. How do we change that? What do we do? And really, it is the propaganda, it is the media. And I think school is an important part of education. But if you grow up in a very challenged, very abusive, or very impoverished, or very challenged childhood, school's going to have little influence. It's about the football team that's supported. It's about the food that's eaten at home. It's about the way a person's brought up positively. It's a restricted code, it's an elaborate code. I think we have to really think about what's the long-term plan for humans in the next 70 to 100 years. What can we do today to minimize risk? But what can we do for the long game? And I don't believe that's schools anymore. I believe that is intergenerational, several generations of work in some way. I've not got the answer. I'm here today to learn. I think it's important. What Diane said, Diane, I really respect, you're amazing. You've influenced me over the last few years. I really think we need to consider what is the biggest influence on humans today. Everyone has info, everyone has access to the world that's not regulated, and everyone's got their own environment they grow up in, which is the biggest influence of somebody. That will take several generations to change. What are we going to do? We are at crisis.
Kelly, what's
Well,
your take on the topic of children in your region at the moment? What's happening with children there at the moment?
Oh, I don't think you want to hear what I have to say about children. I mean, I think we know I don't want to talk statistics or theory, but unfortunately, we know in conflict, women and children and teens, they often they carry the largest burden and impact of conflict. And we know that conflict also exasperates domestic violence, violence at community level, sexual violence, etc. This is all very proven, and these are very serious cycles that need to be understood, broken, and healed. The orphans or in the case of Palestine and Gaza, we have a new category of children who are either full amputees or partial amputees, survivors of conflict with no surviving family. I mean, we have new categories of some of the yet to be fully appreciated vulnerable groups that are now children and who will become adults, and how as a global community we deal with and understand the needs of this particular group is going to be, it's a serious topic and it's a serious issue. And I think we are unfortunately seeing the impact of conflict and other forms of violence on children at a rate globally like we've never seen before. And we should all be very, very deeply concerned about this. Deeply concerned. I don't really know what else to say. I don't have solutions for this. I think protection services and protecting the rights of children is under threat. We see children in detention. We see children witnessing atrocities, and we see children dying in extreme forms of violence. This is, as a humanity, we're in a bad place, and we will be judged as adults for this. I do believe this. We will be judged for how children are either served or protected by adults.
And we are seeing this outside the war zone, also in domestic family violence. It's on the increase.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of, expecting that kind of an answer from you, but thank you for being honest.
Sorry, Kino. I have to be. I have to be.
We have to
honest.
be. Yeah, we have to be. Right now the world is in this festive season, festive mode. People are coming together. There's celebrations that are happening or going to be happening. When it comes New Year's Eve, once again, communities are coming together and they're celebrating going into the new year. Yet, what Kelly has just said. So us as humans, how do we celebrate a festive season as it's labeled? How do we celebrate New Year's Eve as it's labeled? Celebrate going into a new year with joy, as the narrative is. Yet, this is what's happening to children, Yeah, please.
Yeah, it makes me think too about, for a new year, what is exactly going to be new about the year?
Exactly.
What I was going to say is that when Kelly's talking about the reality of the children, women, and the teenagers there, I think that naivety and illusion is always one of the barriers of people that can think and see and care and can analyze, because it can become overwhelming if we look at the brokenness. The brokenness is what it is. And so seeing it and allowing it to infect our hearts is important, because that's the full human we are. And then say, now what? Now what are we going to do? And that's in an individual level we can do, and we do all the time on an individual level. The kids that I work with, is a high trauma area. And so as a counselor, I'm consistently and every day hearing about their lives and about how unsolvable they are and how helpless they are. And so then what I say to them is, okay, that's all true. But now what? What do you want? And what you want matters. And that's why I think, for instance, this forum is basically about what we want. And so it was mentioned about schools. Schools are they're an institution, and they're not any more sort of current or part of the solution than a church is, because they are bound to their traditions and reproducing what they've always done, and which is a comfort zone. This is a time where media, you know, as toxic as it has been, is the way to reach people quickly and massively. And that's why Donald Trump is like a clarion in some ways. He's had an easy victory, where his one concept of make America great again has won out no matter what he says or does that seems ridiculous. People instead want America to be great again. And so again, that sense of one tribe, if media could start to get legs and start to emphasize a direction that was based really on truth, meaning that we can't make anybody great again if we have situations like what's happening in the Middle East. And so we could reach people in much quicker than 1 or 2 generations, because social media already does that. I mean, there are 250,000 people came to Vancouver this last weekend because Taylor Swift was having her last 3 concerts of her world tour. They weren't just coming to see the concert, they were coming to be part of the phenomenon. Well, that only exists, that's just in 2 or 3 years, not generations. It exists because the media, we have that capacity now to touch people. And we know in this panel right here, we know what's needed, which is for people to actually just activate their caring, to activate their reaching out to others without seeing a barrier. So we really have the message. And again, like what Don is saying, we don't need a God to make that message resonate. The message already does resonate. We just have to have a way to contact the message to people, which is that we are one tribe. And individually, we live that every day. There are obviously some individuals that are deviant. Some people have been so traumatized that they just act out the trauma. But 90% of people are showing kindness to others every day. They know that. It's not like we have to discover the heart that they have. It's there. We just have to give them the focus. The focus is what's missing right now. And we do that again by not shying away from the pain that we feel that is in our eyes, like anybody that's followed the Gaza situation and allowed themselves the smallest amount of wonder what it'd be like to be in their shoes, has to feel absolutely sick in their stomach. So we can respond to that by saying, no, I'm not going to accept it. I'm going to speak this truth. And I'm going to put this truth out there, that hurt doesn't work, but kindness does. And it doesn't work to say, yes, we needed to do this for this reason if it causes hurt. It just doesn't work.
Our truth. Yes, Kinkun.
Thank you. I just wanted to add when
Gary,
you
I
just
think.
what Gary? Yeah. Thank you. I love what you said, and I agree with the focus part too, because I do believe when we, for example, see something terrible and we look at it and we say, oh my God, this is terrible. And let's say it's far enough away that we actually can't do anything physically about it. I don't think we're being helpful. And I have this conversation with my mom a lot, because she would look at things somewhere in the world and she'd be like, oh my God, and it's this horrible thing. And she's suffering inside for the suffering of others. And I say, and I 100% believe this, the energy is a creation. And if we want to be helpful to the situations that are out of our hands,
the best thing we can do is, I do believe there is a God, which I only like using that word. It's actually an energy, a supportive energy out there, as Isabel had said earlier, that is there to want to help us. If we put out that trust towards a situation that we can't actually get into, but the energy putting that and love and trust into something as a thought is already something. And I know that there have been many tests that they made about how powerful the thought is. And again, so if we are inspired or capable to help a situation, by all means we should. But if, and we must, I think, because it's inside, we're being guided, and listen to ourselves is a good thing. But if we cannot help physically, then I think the best thing we can do is not look at it and be all freaking out about what we see, but rather put trust and believe in this. Because again, this is a matter of belief, but I believe everything has its place. And all horrifying things are, for some reason, with reason, and I don't know what it is, but I do think it brings us all to something greater. And this is, of course, not for everyone, because when I'm saying that, obviously, it's like saying to a victim, everything is created by self, isn't helpful to the victim who's experiencing pain. But again, in an energetic sense, I think we can help each other a lot when we put more trust into situations. And if we can physically help, please, let's do it. Can I just quickly, I see Diana wants to say something too, but I feel like hope is super important, that we all have the hope that things can get better, and that we believe, that we accept a belief in which we have the power to make things better. I think that's on the top of the list here for us to bring change for all of us. But Diana, sorry.
Have hope and faith. Yeah, Dan.
Yeah,
Okay.
I want to say that I believe, as I think all of us on this panel and many others that will be listening, in the humanity of us all, which is inclusive. But I want to say that I don't think everybody shares that message. And although I think many people are very kind towards each other, and I think that as a value, maybe 100% of people would say they value kindness, right, as an act of caring. But taking that value and practicing it with other people that one sees as, quote, the other, I don't think that kindness necessarily generates in a world that's also filled with tribalism and racism, and hatred towards other people, and people thinking, not that, on the one hand, maybe that person's heart breaks for the destruction of people and countries and women and children and men and amputees and all that horror. And yet I think there are people who look at that and say, well, that's terrible, but they deserve that. And they ignore that, or they don't see that person as part of humanity. So I would sadly, in my own opinion, feel that that message of, like, we all know what the message is, or what the, quote, responsive solution over several generations would be, I don't think that everyone sees it that way. And I think that's the problem, right? And kind of circling around what T.S. Eliot said, right? You come to the ending and it's the beginning again.
Yeah. Okay. I'm overwhelmed at the at the present moment. Unfortunately, we have to start wrapping it up, with a conclusion. The solutions. None of us can really say we have all the solutions at the moment to what's going on in the world and how we can bring, unity, stop the conflicts, get people more educated. We don't have it, and we're not going to figure it all out in this panel alone. It's going to take a long time, but it's a foundation. It's a foundation. Dana, do you want to add something?
I guess I just want to give a shout out to hope, as that was mentioned before, and thinking about Pandora's box, right? Where all the ills of humanity were in that box, and she opened the box, but at the bottom of the box was hope, right? So we have to empower hope in ourselves and in the world.
Yeah. I mean, at the start, I mentioned to all of you that, during the conclusion, I was going to say that, our job, your responsibility, wouldn't really call it a job, as a humanitarian, you're doing it because I truly believe that each one of us on this panel, and there's plenty of people out there in the world as well, have been put, in this world for a specific reason. But the takeaway from this is that it doesn't stop here, doesn't end here. We have to, in our own personal capacity, go out, and we have to actually start putting our teams together, to actually resolve the issues, conflict and unity that's going on. It's not only happening, in the States, it's also happening in South Africa. It's happening all around the world. We have to go out. This is just the root of it all. I've taken down like a lot of notes out of this whole conversation. As I said, it's overwhelming. Just one thing I just want to mention, that I'm going to hand it over to Don to conclude. And this is just going to be Kino being Kino, who is controversial at times, because, I just know how the world really works. And if you look closer, enough, you're actually going to see how the dots are connected. Like as far as political reform, my honest point of view, that's a task that we unfortunately won't be able to accomplish. We have to work underground. We have to work underground with this. On that topic, I believe how the world works is pre-planned. I don't believe in fair elections when it comes to politics. I don't believe in fair elections. I predicted in 2021 that Donald Trump will take the presidency back. There is an agenda at play at the moment in the world. Unfortunately, the news, they have to create the narratives that are filtered down. There is an agenda in play. And we just have to work through this and work underground, So as much as, there's millions of people out there that believe in fair elections, that believe, yes, we can change leadership, I believe that when someone is taken out of power, it's part of the agenda anyway. Okay? That's my opinion. I've just connected the dots, along the way. So we have to work underground, and the only way we're going to do this is maybe not focusing on the macro, changing the macro, but just working in the micro. My thoughts on it. Getting the word out there to as much people as we can, that's within our reach.
Okay, I just want to wind up on my side and to say how much I've really enjoyed this. We had no idea how this was going to come off, and sorry, a few people who wanted to be here couldn't be, but it just has been a really interesting discussion. And if you think about how many people do you know that are having this level of discussion, my guess is not a whole lot. It's more like, boy, how are those Blue Jays doing? Which, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's like if we could encourage, as Kino said, to have these discussions with our friends, encourage them to have these discussions. Say, geez, I heard this woman who's in Jordan right now, and boy, what she was saying to me really made me think. That kind of thing. We can take things away from here. But we've spent a lot of time. I've really enjoyed it, but it's probably time to wind up. But I just wanted to leave, if you don't mind, if I can figure how to share here. A couple of things, and one of them I thought was quite interesting, because it's pretty much one of the things that we were talking about. The first one is this is Carl Jung, until you make the unconscious conscious, it'll direct your life, and you'll call it fate. So many of us just act, without reflection. And this is what I think Kelly was referring to. If you don't take the time to think things out, you just respond from your unconscious, whether it is unconscious tribalism, unconscious bigotry against the other. It's there, and we need to look at it and think about it and examine it. And lastly, I wanted to leave, because we're talking, and I'm so happy we are talking about, well, what can be done? And I certainly understand a lot of the pessimism, but I like this. There exists the perfect combination of signals that will make everyone feel that they're party to a singular membership deep down in their bones. What we need is the greatest marketing campaign in history of the world to project a new model meta-tribe, Team Human. And I think, that kind of speaks to a lot of what we've been saying. And what that looks like, I have the faintest idea, but I'd like to be part of that Team Human building myself. So I'm gonna sign off with that. Thank you guys. Boy, like we weren't even sure how to do this, and you guys have been very patient and kind and great.
We live, we learn, we grow. That's what makes us human. That's what makes us human. But yeah, we haven't reached, even though we're concluding, this panel, we haven't really concluded yet, on what's the way forward. All we can do is just take in all that was discussed here and see what we can do with it. See what we can do with it. But Kelly, there's still a lot that I want to learn from you, personally. So yeah.
I believe we all have each other's email.
Yeah.
If we want to correspond with each other individually, I think we'd all be open to that. And
yeah, definitely.
And then, we're talking about a program 2. Stay tuned.
Don, Kino, can I just say just a few last things, maybe from the Middle East?
Yeah, no problem.
If I can just stay hopeful, which I am, is that historically we know conflicts will end. Conflicts end. How we prepare ourselves to take advantage of the end is probably, in my opinion, the most important. And is if we're scared to do things that are human-centered, we do it scared.
Just do it.
Just do it.
May I say something on the back end of that? From the global pandemic of domestic violence and suicide, millions of victims, millions of people every year, and names and hurts people every year. I think if we're going to find a paradigm to market the heck out of to improve the world, we first have to understand the core condition of the human that's causing conflict, whether it's the silent war of suicide, domestic violence, or the overt war of conflict in nations. And I think this is a very privileged place to be with your minds today. And I think we're a group of souls knowing there's a problem, and we're trying our best to work it out, no matter what our war is.
Yeah, great.
All right.
A latecomer.
I don't know who that is. But I got him muted.
Coming for the after party. Whatever the after party is.
All right. So I'm going to wind it up.
Yeah, let's wind it up. Maybe we can. Is that Alpha? Is that Motto G?
I don't think so. I don't know what it is.
Okay, for now, let me just put in waiting room, and we can wrap it up, and we can just bring him to tell him it's been concluded, and then we can include him on the next one.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll put him back.
And you're going to do this up and then get it out to all of us in like tomorrow morning, right? No, I'm just joking.
I wish I was a robot. I wish I was a robot to do that for you. I do.
Say goodbye.
Yeah. Okay, once again, thank you, each and every single one of you, Kelly, Diane, Our Truth, Calvin, Michael, Neil, you in the background. Thank you for being here as well. you know, I thought that was like Neil, like, you know, he was alive with that smile and look, like, for the first 5 minutes of the show today.
What did that
Until he
do?
came in the background. And I was like, sure, he can really keep himself still, eh? You know?
You said, what does Neil do? Neil's my media manager. He keeps me in check and tells me when I've done right things or wrong things. He does slap me occasionally.
And
So he's here just to check up on you.
Is he driving, Michael?
Check up on you.
No. My husband's driving.
Okay.
Yeah, no, but thanks all. We will definitely be seeing each other again soon. We have a huge task, and Kelly, I'm sure you can agree with this, that this is not something that you say, I'm going to be doing for a year or for 2 years, and then I'm going to go back to a normal life. This is for life, you know. This is for life.
This is for
Until
life.
death do us part, right?
Exactly.
That's why we're all here, till death do us part. You know, that's what comes with it. That's what comes with it. That's what I say, you know, we have all been put here for a reason. And there's a lot more people out there, and we're going to find them and bring them on, you know. But it's still dead to us part.
All right. I'm going to
All right.
stop
Bye,
recording.
guys. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank